Hey, today we're going to talk about my 50-day update in my traveler's notebook system. So believe it or not, I've made it 50 consecutive days using my traveler's notebooks. And as we're starting to kind of approach that 2024 planner season and the trialing of things for next year kind of officially is in full swing for me, I thought I would do a little recap on what I've learned these last 50 days, the things I liked, the things I didn't, and what I think I'm going to be experimenting with next. Overall, I would say this has been a good thing for me to kind of get back into consistency. I didn't think I realized how overwhelmed I felt moving around, but I also kind of started to recognize that I was getting a little bit bored being very consistent too. So first takeaway is I definitely need a system that allows for a lot of change, and there is quite a bit of change that you can do within your traveler's notebook. Obviously, it's a very flexible system. You can add inserts and remove and dictate whatever type of paper you're looking for and things like that, but there are certain things, particularly with my passport, that I was kind of falling out of love with that I think will impact my decisions for my planner system moving forward and next year. Let's talk about the positives. The main positive I really think is just the standard size. Over the last month and a half, I've really fallen in love with the standard size and really fallen out of love with my passport, which I was not expecting whatsoever because I've always been a huge fan of the passport, and the standards always felt kind of a little bit awkward. I don't know if it's the paper or just slowly kind of adding personality to these inserts, but the vertical weekly with the MD paper has been great. I've really enjoyed adding some micro journaling and pulling out stickers again, because I've been slowly shifting away from stickers, it seems like, this year, so it's been fun to kind of add them back into my routine. And again, still loving the Midori MD cream paper in my Dear Diary portion of my standard setup as well. I have 2 pages left in this insert, so I blew through it pretty quickly. I think I started this July 8th was kind of like my first official entry from this current streak. And I did have a lot of tip-ins or happy mail that I kind of kept, so some pages are just dedicated to things like that, but I did go through this pretty quickly overall. I also enjoyed finding use for the planner pages. That is something I don't think I've really done intentionally in any of my other systems this year, but using the month at a glance as like a micro habit tracker was nice, and I want to carry that forward into whatever I move into next. And I use the monthly logs to keep track of when I did journal and what I did journal about, which again, liked actually putting these to use, but I think moving forward I might do this as more of like a gratitude or affirmation space. And in the back, I used the blank pages to do sort of like a monthly recap spread, and I had a lot of fun doing this type of journaling, and again, a concept I think I want to move forward. Whether I come back to this next year or later in the year, whatever I want to use next, I think this is something that I kind of want to take with me. So a lot I learned from my time in the standard size, but there are some things that I'm not liking about this. In particular, I would say it's the Dear Diary insert. What I am noticing, and there's probably a workaround, but what I'm noticing in here in particular is 2 things. One, the type of journaling that I'm doing is not what I'm wanting to do. I don't know if it's because it's an undated notebook, but I find the minute I reach for this, I tend to just sort of stream of consciousness journal. And that's all I do in here. And I like stream of consciousness journaling, there's nothing wrong with it, but for me, there's a lot of value in sort of writing about my day and collecting memories. And I think I've mentioned this in videos earlier in this year, but who I am as a planner has kind of shifted from like a hyper productivity type of person into more of someone who romanticizes logging things, memory keeping, and exploring art. And I definitely felt like I explored the art a lot, but the type of journaling I did in here just didn't feel very meaningful. I like flipping through this to see the spreads overall, but I don't think I'll ever flip back through and reread the contents because I just know a lot of it really wasn't super meaningful for me. So I don't know if it's because it's undated or maybe because the insert felt temporary because it's a single insert and not something that I'm really likely to keep for years and years and years. I just approached my journaling a little bit differently, and I tried over the last couple of weeks to really kind of hone in on journal how you used to in other notebooks, and it just always ended up the same. So that's really been the main thing that I'm sort of starting to be like, okay, well, maybe I need to make a change if the type of journaling I want to do, it doesn't come naturally to me in this notebook. It's a small thing. I'm sure I could find a way around that, but it's something that I'm noticing and I'm not absolutely in love with when it comes to this. The second thing, and I'll echo this when I get to the passport, is usually I hop out of these notebooks and kind of back and forth quickly enough that once I pass the halfway point of the insert, I'll have switched, and this time I was dedicated to working through the second half of the insert, and it's just irritating to write around the ridge that is that elastic. Now, the further I get into the notebook, it is less of a problem, and I tried rearranging my notebooks, like putting the elastic band through the back of the cover or the front of the cover versus the middle of the insert, and trying to get creative that way. But anyway, I kind of had that in here. Once I get past what I'm now referring to as the honeymoon phase of the first half of an insert, it's just been a little bit more challenging to write in, and it adds a little bit of resistance for me to pick up that notebook, because I'm like, it's just gonna be kind of awkward, or it's not gonna look quite right, because we've mentioned this before, I'm a bit trash for aesthetics. And so if a spread doesn't look nice at the end of it, I'm kind of like meh about it at the end of the day. But overall, I would say really enjoyed standard, could see myself going back into this size, but ready to try something else to kind of scratch the type of journaling, which is a bit more memory keeping focused, that I want to be doing right now. On the passport side, again, I think the main thing that really helped me this time around is I set up a habit tracker in here. This is from Peanuts Planner Co. It's the 104 Undated Yearly Bundle. And I was literally every morning coming in and coloring in a square for days that I stayed in my passport. And I think just little things like this, especially if you're a habit tracker motivated individual like I am, little things like this really help me with consistency. So whatever my next challenge is, I think setting up a habit tracker, I'm 100% going to do. I need to play to my strengths more often. And I know this about my personality. I will do a lot of things out of my comfort zone just for a little checkbox. So this was a good thing for me to add, and it definitely helped me with my consistency. So over the last 50 days, while I think I fell more in love with my standard size, I really fell out of love with my passport, and just for a handful of reasons. One, I really like change, which is hilarious to say because I don't actually like change in real life, but I like change in my planners. And I am very bored of my annual setup. I think on paper, this is a really great way for me to keep all of the spreads and information that I want to keep handy throughout the year. Like on paper, and last year, this worked out really well for me, but I am at the point towards the latter half of the year where I'm just over this setup. I would like a chance to refresh it, and I could easily pull out an annual book or an additional insert and kind of pick up and start fresh. But there's also something about that doesn't quite mesh well with my brain. So right now I'm really craving just a fresh setup. And I think now that I've kind of recognized, like, yes, this is great functionally, but I personally just prefer opportunities for more fresh starts. I've already kind of honed in on next year for me is the year of the bullet journal. I just wasn't sure if I was going to bullet journal in a notebook or in a traveler's notebook. And I think either way, I don't necessarily want to set up a annual setup. I think I just want to kind of bullet journal as I go, and maybe print out habit trackers on like sticky notes or something that could be easily moved from notebook to notebook, so that I have those fresh starts completely built into my system versus only in the quarterly side. And I don't do any sort of quarterly setup in here. It's literally just a cover page, and then I move directly into my monthly spreads and my weeklies and my dailies. So there's not a whole lot of setup that changes when it comes to the quarterly insert. Same complaint that I had in the standard size. I hit that halfway point in my quarterly book. And I have tried, again, looping this through different parts of the insert, so front cover, back cover, just a few pages forward or backward. I tried moving this to the front of the book and my annual book to the back. I've tried a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, I just kind of get irritated with the second half of the insert, and I don't know if it's just like at that point the pages start to look a little bit messier or what it is, but I definitely have a honeymoon period about until this halfway point, and then I flip the page and I'm just like immediately no. If you've heard the audio clip, and I'm ready for something else. So overall, I think it's been really good for me to experiment with this. It's been really refreshing to be consistent, and I've kind of proven to myself or collected the data on how I want to use a traveler's notebook system. This is a heavy contender for me for 2024 because I have enjoyed this a lot, but I'm starting to recognize little things that I think are starting to irritate me. I'm trying to not feel pressured to go ahead and place that order. I've got another month or two to kind of figure out what I want to do. So from here, I think we're going to move on to my next system experiment trial run for 2024 and see where we want to go. So here's what I'm going to move into next. So I think for the rest of this year, I'm gonna bring back the system that I was using in April and May, because this is what I use probably the second longest so far this year, and that is bullet journaling in a pocket size or A6 Leuchtturm1917, journaling in a Hobonichi Techo as part of like my daily memory keeping, and then having some sort of support notebook for like runoff morning pages and other types of journaling that don't necessarily make sense to put in here. When I tried the system earlier this year, I was trying to put a Hobonichi notebook in the back because I did opt for a Hobonichi Avec this year. This is a Hobonichi Techo A6 size, by the way. And I really enjoyed it while I was using it. In fact, I think my like 30-day challenge vlog, I'm primarily using these two. So if you want to check those out, I do have some vlog content around them. But what I am kind of realizing is moving into a pocket bullet journal, it sort of gives me at minimum 3 opportunities to redo a whole fresh setup. But I did set this up as like an August start portion of my bullet journal, and I would imagine this would take me through the month of November before I would run out of pages and then need to set up a new bullet journal, which would line up really nicely for me because I actually prefer to start my planners in December. It's something that I picked up from using a Hobonichi Weeks, and it just works way better for my lifestyle in the craziest point of the year. I just need an extra month to move in. So I would probably do the same either way with my bullet journal, whether it's in a passport or in pocket. I'll probably set it up in December and go ahead and move in. I did set this up starting in August, and I have just kind of updated it on the weekends whenever I feel like it, and I'm really enjoying this setup. And I really like the opportunity of having a fresh start built in, and some of the habit trackers that I get a little bit irritated when I have to move information from notebook to notebook, I went ahead and just put on a printable and washi taped it down so I can move it from notebook to notebook. So I didn't have to spend time moving over any of the data, and most of my other habit trackers, I don't actually need to see like a year's worth of data collected. So that's something I'm starting to kind of recognize, and overall I've just kind of missed the bigger grid size. I think I talked about this over on Instagram, but I historically lean towards small grid space because I have tiny handwriting, but it's been kind of nice being back in a 5mm grid. I feel like things have room to breathe. So that's been nice as well. And because things are more spaced out, I think it's actually easier for me to find things when I'm looking at a task list and being able to say, yep, that's a specific task. I can kind of zero in on things a little bit easier. My eyes don't have to work so hard, if that makes any sense. I can go either way. I like a tiny grid, but right now I'm just enjoying a slightly bigger grid. This paper holds up to watercolor really well too, and it dries very quickly, so that's been a nice thing coming from the Tomoe River paper inserts that I had in my passport. I just had to wait forever for watercolor to dry, so it's been nice kind of being back in this and having that. And right now, though, part of this appeal is that it's backdated, so it looks really clean and fresh, and as I mentioned, I really like a clean spread, so that's part of the appeal right now. So that might change as we go, but I have been reaching for this for the last few days and really enjoying it again. So I'm glad to have this. I also love that they're self-contained. Sort of the elephant in the room for me when it comes to Traveler's Notebook is my spending habits. I can't resist their branding. I don't know what it is, but I'm a sucker for it. So any kind of resistance I can put between what I'm using and feeling like I gotta catch them all with their limited edition stuff works out pretty well for me. And I've mentioned that before in other videos. No shame if you have a beautiful collection. I'm very envious of you. But just right now with the money habits that I'm trying to create and bring into next year, I think this is good for me just to put a little bit of resistance between. In my Hobonichi, this is my manga and I cover. I think it was from 2020, maybe 2021, I don't remember. But in here I have my Hobonichi Techo Avec, and I have been journaling in here off and on. Let me grab my one from the first half of the year. This is the one I was using earlier in May and June, and I just really enjoyed how I was memory keeping in here. I write differently on a dated page than a blank page, and I can't explain it, but there's something about seeing a dated page and immediately wanting to tell stories related to the day. And I enjoy so much flipping back through these. I find the A6 size to be pretty sustainable for me to fill out. Like, I was traveling on vacation and I was able to fill these out pretty much on a daily basis. If I print a photo, it's like 5 minutes. If I sit here and just write pen to paper, I can do it in about 15. So it's easy for me to keep up with as part of my nighttime routine, and I absolutely love flipping through these. There's something about this that is so satisfying compared to flipping through like a filled in blank notebook for some reason. I don't know what it is. I really can't explain it. It's all in my head, I'm sure, but I just love this, and there is a huge part of me that really wants to have this type of journal completely full again for next year. So I think right now this is the type of journaling I want to do. This is a space that helps me do that type of journaling with less resistance or less overthinking things. So for now, I think this is kind of what I'm going to be trialing out for a little while just to see how it goes. And I've been dipping my toes in here since I think it was like the 19th. And so far I've just really loved all the spreads, how they're coming out, how I'm journaling, and it's fun. So also it's Hobonichi season, so how can I resist? But however, one thing about this is I journal a lot. I'm the kind of person who thinks on paper. I need to like get things out for me to process things like emotions. Like sometimes I won't realize that I'm hurt or I'm frustrated, and until I write it out, and I can start to catalog like, oh, this looks like frustration, and it helps me deal with those emotions or communicate those emotions better to people. It just sort of depends. So I need space to do like brain dumps, to word vomit, to rant, to process things like emotions and stuff. So I kind of need more space than an A6 day per page. Unless I'm super busy, enjoy writing things a lot more than just this amount of space. So I am picking this back up. This is just another pocket Leuchtturm. Would like to maybe move into a bigger notebook next year compared to just having 2 pocket notebooks, but I was halfway through this notebook and I was pretty much using it for this purpose as sort of just like, I call it runoff journaling, excess journaling, whatever it is that I need to do. I was halfway through this notebook, so I've just picked this back up to kind of use for that purpose, because otherwise I'm never going to finish the notebook. And I'm using my fountain pens in here. This paper does behave pretty well in my experience with fountain pen and various inks and watercolors and all those types of things. It's not quite as smooth and nice as a Midori MD notebook, but using it up, and I like that it's pocketable. If I feel like I need to have this type of journal with me, it's easy to take along as well. So anyway, it's kind of weird to say that I'm expanding my system, but I guess I kind of am, because I was going from this, which was weekly memory keeping and Dear Diary journaling and my passport bullet journal, to a pocket bullet journal, my memory keeping / daily journal, and then a as needed run off journal. So now we're kind of at a 3 stack here, which is, I don't know how I feel about it, but I definitely want to give it a try, because the Hobonichi products that I'm looking at for next year don't go on sale until October or November, because I think I would go with the English edition for the A6 Techo, which means I've got time to make up my mind. So I want to give this a go for at least a month or two, like I did with my traveler's notebooks, and see which between the two, what were the pros, what were the cons, do I want to cherry pick between them, and hopefully have a more solid system for 2024, because I have a really crazy year coming up. And I'm never going to get it right the first time. Half the fun is switching my planner system around, I think. As a self-proclaimed planner hopper, I think I'm always going to do that. But I do know, just with what's on my plate for next year, I would like to be a little bit more consistent, at least for the first half of the year. So I'm putting in the R&D in 2023 to hopefully have a smoother 2024. Let me know your thoughts. I apologize if you're hoping I would stay in the traveler's notebooks, but I am ready to just try something different for a little bit. I like trying new things, and this is what I think is a good solution for some of the issues that I was having in here. And we will see where I land and what I end up ordering for 2024. But if you made it this long, thank you so much for listening and for being here, and I will talk to you soon.